give a nice welcome to our friend, Marilyn Sherman.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. I not only have one pair, but 2 pairs of Spanx on. Ladies, you know what I'm talking about. Guys, don't worry about it. So I want to talk about what my belief is. My belief is that life is a venue. You have choices as to where you sit in your life. You have 3 choices. You can sit in the balcony. Well, when you sit in the balcony, usually these are view-obstructed seats, am I right? And usually when you sit in the balcony, sometimes you sit in the balcony because you want to sneak out and come back in and nobody notice, right? Then there's general admission. General admission is where most people sit, which is why they call it general admission. I wrote a book about getting out of your comfort zone, so I think general admission is about your comfort zone. The seats aren't bad, but they're not great either. You just sort of settle for hanging out in general admission. And then the third option, the third choice is what? The front row, baby. And that's where life is lived. I believe life is lived in the front row. Now, yeah, I love that. And here's a good question. You know, Bill Glazer talked right before lunch about, here's a good question. Well, here's a good question I like to ask people. What's been one of your favorite front row seat moments in your life? A moment where you said, man, it doesn't get any better than this. So when I asked Jack Canfield that question, he said, and it's very interesting because people usually have an immediate answer. They don't say, well, what do you mean by that? They usually have an immediate answer, and it tells me a lot about who they are. And the answers often surprise me. So when I asked Jack Canfield that, he said, well, it was right after Chicken Soup for the Soul came out. And we had tickets on the court for a Chicago Bulls playoff game, courtside seats. And he and his buddies had T-shirts. They all wore T-shirts, and they said, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Courtside seats, right? And he said at one point Dennis Rodman hit a ball right at him, and he had it, and he picked it up, and everybody saw him on TV, and his mom called him and said, that's how you sell so many Chicken Soup for the Soul books. Talk about advertising. I asked Joe Theismann that question, and he's going to be speaking here on Sunday, and Joe Theismann told me a story that had nothing to do with football. He was at a boxing match in Asia, and it was the heavyweight championship of the world, and he got really good seats. But it was what happened after the fight. It was like the winner and the entourage was going to the locker room, and he jumped the rope and sort of followed the entourage in, and security didn't stop him. And Donald Trump was there. And Donald Trump was like, Joe, can you get me back there? And he thought that was a cool thing that Donald Trump was trying to have access. And then the interview with the winner was on TV back home, and he got calls from all his buddies like, man, I see you on TV in the locker room. So who would have thunk that Joe Theismann's front row seat moment had nothing to do with football? Well, when I wrote this speech about getting a front row seat in life, about 8 years ago, I went to a speaker coach because I constantly believe in investing in myself and in my business and my growth. So I went to a speaker coach, and he asked me a question. He said, Marilyn, when have you ever been in the balcony? Because you seem like kind of a front row person. And I was immediately reminded of when I was 13 years old. Do you remember when you were 13? Did any of you have a crush on someone in your class? Anybody here besides me? Can you remember who it was? Okay, the crush I had when I was 13 years old, he was the cutest guy in the class. And I do not have a jacked up picture of me when I was 13. So just picture a moose with knee pads. And that was me, because I was a jock, and my nickname was Moose. So I did not get a lot of play with the guys. And then one day, the cutest guy in the class came up to me. Not all my cute little girlfriends. Came up to me, and he asked me to meet him behind Island Park Elementary School and make out with him. I was so excited. And then he said, there's a catch. He wanted me to meet him there at midnight. And I'm thinking, I'm a 13-year-old girl. This guy's expecting me to sneak out of my house in the middle of the night just to go meet him behind Island Park Elementary School to make out with him? I am so there. So I did. And for 5 minutes, I was on top of the world. And then we were done. And then he said something to me in that moment that changed my life. He said, don't tell anyone. And in that moment, I felt like I was in the balcony, like I was looking down, and I was not even worthy to be seen in public with. Now, I am not going to blame all my failed relationships on that one incident, but that did affect me for a long time. So I wrote this keynote about how to get a front row seat in life. I want to share with you some strategies to help you navigate from the balcony to the front row. And we have all sorts of seats. We've got our physical seats, we've got our personal seats, we've got our relationship seats. Whatever seat you have that is in the balcony of your life, I want to give you some strategies to move you closer to the front row. Are you ready for this? Say yes. Okay, the first thing I want you to do, Jack talked about this earlier, have a vision, which you all know that. You got to have a vision. You got to know, where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself next week, next month, next year, 5 years, 10 years? So you know that. But I want to add something else to that. Be careful of surrounding yourself with people who have no vision. Be careful of those people, because if they don't get you and they don't support you, it could detract you or derail you. I remember I had a boss one time who had no vision. And I was working in human resources, training and development, because my goal in life was to become a motivational speaker. I saw Roger Crawford when I was 17 years old. James talked about him earlier. He changed my life in a positive way, and I said, I'm going to be a motivational speaker. But I was only 17, and I figured I needed to get credibility first in the job market before I could speak in front of corporate audiences. So I worked in the training department of this company when I got a flyer that came across my desk. Advertising, Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy coming to Philadelphia. It was one of those big, I think it was a Peter Lowe seminar. Thousands of people were going to be there. I grew up listening to their tapes and reading their books. So I went to my boss and I said, hey boss, can I go to this event? I'll learn everything that I can and come back and teach everybody in the department what I learned. And he said, no. He said, I said, well, how about if I pay for it myself? It's only $99. You just give me the day off to go and let me use one of the company cars. I worked for Chrysler, plenty of company cars. I'll go to Philly, come back, and teach everybody in the department what I learned. And he said, no. I said, how about if I pay for it myself, take my own car, you just give me the day off to go? And he said, no. I said, how about if I pay for it myself and take a vacation day? And that's when he said, I don't care what you do when you go on your vacation. I said, well, thank you for your support. I took the day off, drove the hour and a half to Philly. Thousands of people were there, and now I'm like loving every minute. I'm sitting right up close, watching for content, but also watching these speakers. Because I don't want to be like Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy. I want to be like Marilyn Sherman with the opportunities like Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy. So I'm watching them work. And when Brian Tracy was done with his closing keynote presentation, hundreds of people rushed the stage, sort of like what you will do in 13 minutes from now. Rush the stage just to shake it. And I'm watching him work the crowd. He was looking at people eyeball to eyeball, shaking their hand, pulling them through. After about 8 or 9 hands, he would switch and work this side of the room. And I'm thinking, man, this guy is great. He's not ignoring anybody, and he's moving them through so he could talk to a lot of people. And then it hit me. I only have 2.5 seconds with Brian Tracy. What am I going to say to him to let him know I'm not like all these other people? I have a vision. So I went up to him, and when it was my turn, I took a big, deep breath, and I said, Mr. Tracy, my boss wouldn't support me coming here today, so I took a vacation day, paid for myself just to come in here and you speak. And it worked. He didn't shake my hand. He gave me a hug. And when he hugged me, he said, well, was it worth it? Yes. So now I'm driving down the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Brian Tracy hugged me. Brian Tracy hugged me. I can't believe Brian Tracy hugged me. So I went home and I ran upstairs and I told my husband, Brian Tracy hugged me. And guess what he said? Worse, he said he was probably just trying to get you to buy more tapes. I went from scraping the ceiling high to feeling about this big with that one comment. So I divorced him. I mean, why would I want to be married to someone who doesn't support me in my vision? Now, for those of you I've just offended because I'm divorced, I don't think I'm the only one. Has anybody here had a starter marriage like me? So you know what I speak. So number one is to make sure you have that vision and be careful if people don't support you in the vision. Number two, never underestimate the power of acknowledgement. Letting people know how much you care about them. Letting people know how much you appreciate them. Acknowledging people. Never underestimate it. It can change your life. Don't forget about the people that have inspired you. Don't forget about the people that have made a difference in your life. It could be a letter, it could be a note, it could be eyeball to eyeball, it could be a hug, it could be a handshake, something to let people know how much you care about them. And I had one incident where I acknowledged one person, and that changed my life beyond my wildest dreams. I was single for 7 years, and I decided I need a good man in my life. And so I made a list. Have any of you made a list? These are all the traits I want in a man, because I deserve a front row man in my life. So I made a list. 356 traits on my list. I'm going to be specific. I practiced what I preach. I had a big vision, and then I was specific. And in the top 10 of that list, he had to speak fluent French. Because I went to France when I was a kid, fell in love with the culture, and I thought, I want someone in my life who has the same passion as I do for the French culture. So I invested in myself again. I went to a weekend retreat to grow my speaking business, and this man walks in, and he has this French accent, and he talks like this, and I'm like, ho, 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 ho. And that's all it took. And I made a decision. And what are you like when you make a decision? You are on fire. You are on target, man. Nothing can stop you. So I made a decision. I am not going to wait for a man to come into my life to speak French. I'm going to go take a French class. So at the end of that retreat, this man is leaving. He's going to the parking lot. And I practiced what I preach. I went up to him and I said, excuse me, I just want to say thank you for being here. You have no idea what a difference you've made for me. I'm so excited. Because of you being here, I'm going to go take a French class. So I just want to acknowledge you. And I swear that was my only intention. I swear. I had no expectation of anything in return. Much to my surprise and delight, he said, well, I can be your French teacher. So he took me out to dinner, and I took notes. And he took me out to dinner the next night, and I took less notes. And then I married him. So never underestimate the power of acknowledgement. And by the way, my goal board for years, 20 years ago, had a picture of the Eiffel Tower with a couple underneath it. Well, my Christmas card 5 years ago was Eve and I as the couple under the Eiffel Tower. So, isn't that sweet? So, the third one is, what is the third one? Take your work very seriously. This is your job. Take it seriously. And I learned that from a 5th grader. Do you all remember the Beijing Summer Olympics? Whenever there's an Olympic Games, they always have the opening ceremonies, and they have all the countries come in alphabetical order, and they always choose one athlete to be the designated athlete to carry the flag. Except for the host country always comes in last. So the Beijing China team came in last, and their designated athlete was the basketball player. What's his name? Yao Ming. And he was carrying the flag, but he wasn't alone. He was holding the hand of a 5th grader named Lin Hao. And he had his own little flag. And the reason why this little boy had the honor of having the world watch him walk into the opening ceremonies is because right before the opening ceremonies, right before the Olympics, his elementary school was the epicenter of an earthquake. And he got out. He survived. And as soon as he got out, he turned back around and went in and rescued a classmate who had been unconscious, literally carried him to safety. And when he did that, he turned back around, and he did it again. Little 5th grader saved the lives of 2 of his classmates. And when he got out, he gathered all the children together, led them in song as they waited for the rescuers, just to keep them calm. And when the media got a hold of this, they interviewed him, and they said, why'd you do that? He said, it was my job. I am their hall monitor. Isn't that sweet? It was his job. This little fifth grader had so much integrity. So look at what you do. It is your job. Take it very seriously. Whether it's finishing your book, hiring a coach, going to events, interviewing people, finishing projects, it's your job. Take it very seriously. But then my last point is, but don't take yourself seriously. I mean, we really need to lighten up, don't you think? So here's my challenge for you. I want you to make it a goal for yourself to laugh hysterically at least once a day. Laughing hysterically. Elaine, you know this. We got a comedian in the audience. And Ida does comedy up in Canada. Where's Ida? There you go. You know this. Laughter releases endorphins in your brain. Endorphins are a natural chemical that make you, it's like exponentially more powerful than morphine. And it's free and legal. And you can get these endorphins every time you laugh hysterically or work out or have sex or eat chocolate. Not all at the same time, no. But it does work even when you fake it. That would be the laughing part. So the next time someone says, hey, you want to go work out? I don't need to. So here's a practical idea. I have my device, my day timer. I have a section in here called my humor file. And anytime something that happens that just cracks me up, I write it down. So I have a list of things that just crack me up to get those endorphins released again. I just reread things in my humor file. And as a speaker, I've made every mistake in the book. So I have to take myself lightly, you know, just because you have to. Like the one time I was in Alaska. Are any of you here from Alaska? Okay, you know what's unique about Alaska? There's a lot of what in Alaska? Men. There's so many men up in Alaska. I met a woman in Fairbanks. She said, there's so many men up here that the odds are really good. But I've lived here all my life, so I have to warn you, the goods are really odd. She's nodding. So I go into my audience the next morning, and they're all men. So I'm thinking, ooh, the odds are good, the goods are odd. And I walked in, and I said, good morning, gentlemen. The button on my blouse popped off. And I thought, of all places for me to expose myself, I do it in front of this audience who hasn't seen this in a while. So I thought that was funny. That goes in my humor file. Another time I was traveling to Orlando, Florida. When you get out of the airport in Orlando, the taxi line is long. I don't like to wait in line. So I went to the front of the line, and I got out of my comfort zone, and I started asking if anybody was going to the same resort I was going to. And sure enough, I met a guy. He said, let's share expenses. So in the cab on the way to the resort, he said, so what brings you to Orlando? And I said, I'm going to speak at this really big women's conference. And he got this huge smile on his face, and he said, I love big women. I said, no. You don't understand. You don't understand. It's a really large women's conference. And he's like, I love them large, baby. And then the last one I love to share, do you remember when the Chilean miners were rescued recently? Well, before that accident, there was in Pennsylvania, the Coal Creek miners that were trapped for 77 hours. And there were 9 of them. And they were trapped in this mine, and they thought they were going to die. And they eventually were rescued, and they wrote a book about it. And I love reading books about inspiring stories so I can share those inspiring stories with my audiences. Well, when I was reading this book, it just cracked me up because, number one, they said there was some dissension among the team because the water in the mine kept rising, and they really thought they were going to die, so they wrote all the letters to their families saying goodbye. And some of the guys said, you know what, let's just tie ourselves into one, tie us together and just go under the water, and let's just die now, and then they could rescue the bodies all at one time. And then there were other guys saying, no, we're going to get rescued. You have to have faith. You have to have hope. Luckily, those guys won out. And they moved to higher ground. But as they moved to higher ground, one of the guys looked at the other guys and said, hey, do any of you guys want to have sex before we die? And the guy said, the laughter just helped release all that pent-up tension. So this just reminds me of 2 things. Number one, laughter and having a sense of humor is so healthy for all of us. Number 2, it reminds me that men will have sex anywhere, at any time, with anybody. So I just want to say that it's very cool to have a concept of getting a front row seat in life, because now I have an industry that like James said, the food service industry. I'm going to Chicago to go to the NRA, National Restaurant Association, and the condo that I was staying at fell through, so I went on LinkedIn and I said, does anybody want a room with me? Because in Chicago at NRA, you can't get a hotel. And I got this message back this morning. I would be thrilled to be your roommate. I have a reservation at the Hard Rock Hotel. It looks like a front row type of place. People know me, and they know I'm all about the front row. And when I was at an event recently, the Women's Food Service Forum, I've spoken there for 7 years in a row. Coca-Cola had a reserved table in the front row. There was 2,000 people in the audience. And I'm not sitting in the front row, I'm sitting in the second row. A woman from Coca-Cola saw me, literally went over to me and said, Marilyn, what are you not doing in the front row? Come with me. And she pulled me up, and now I sat at the head table with Coca-Cola. Find something that people then can relate to you and know you for, and then you just build on that, and you too can have a career. So thank you so much, James, for the opportunity to be in front of everybody, and I will see all of you in the front row.